Just running in here from the rain to get to Greenbean's Pod 71. I'm soaking wet. It's pouring outside. I ran in, and here I am. Let me take a second to dry off. Poof! There we are. Nice and dry. Wearing my Becton jersey. You want to know why I'm wearing my Becton jersey? Because this is going to be the off-season recap video, episode 71 of Greenbean's Pod. We'll have all the sections that we always have, but we're going to focus on the entirety of the off-season as to where we stand right now. Welcome to all of you guys popping in to hang out with me for another great episode of my favorite thing in the world to do, Greenbean's Pod, and I want to take a special second and thank all of you people out there listening in the audio world. Thanks to everybody who's out there listening that way. I want to tell you that there's something you can do. You always hear me talking about like and subscribe and all that, but check this out. There are actually rating systems out there in the audio world. I listen through most of my podcasts through Apple Podcasts, and you can give it 5 stars and write a little blurb and all that kind of stuff. Whatever platform you're listening on, they do have a rating system. Go ahead, take a second if you wouldn't mind. I would greatly appreciate it. Let them know that I'm a good guy over here. This guy's okay. And that's what it is. To all of you guys listening or watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, no time like the present. It's a rectangular, candy-like button.
A jolly candy-like button!
That says subscribe. You go ahead and hit that button. You are part of our family. If you're looking for more exclusive content, stuff that not everybody gets, you have access, lots of hangouts with me. You can join the Beanbaggers by clicking on that first link in the top of the description, which says Patreon. Come on in, join the fun. We're having a great time in there, and it would be greatly appreciated. It helps the channel when it gets down to it, and I'm thankful for all of your support out there. So guys, we are now at that interesting place where we start to wonder, hey, what's going on? What happened? We had so much stuff to look forward to, and now it's like, what do we do? What's going on? Where are we with all this stuff? Well, this happens every year. Now, we just had kind of the last thing before we start hitting into, training camp. Really, we'll have some OTAs and that sort of stuff. But it's kind of the last thing just happened this week, which is the schedule. We got the official 2022 schedule, which there were leaks. We overreacted yet again, and what happened? The leaks were wrong. Remember that one? It seems like years ago. Remember we were all arguing about whether or not it was a good idea to start the season on Sunday Night Football against our division rival New England Patriots? Remember that? We got so mad, we got so amped, we got so upset, we argued, and it wasn't even real. It's just funny. I wonder who does this, like fake leaks for the sake of fake leaks. Like, I always wonder, did the person that put the leak out think they were right? Did they get just bad intel? Maybe somebody made a mistake, something like that. Or are they specifically designing this stuff to see what kind of reaction they get? I gotta tell you, I think I lean toward the latter. I think people really get off on seeing how many feathers they can ruffle. It's just, I don't know. I don't relate to that. That doesn't resonate with me. I'm actually way on the other side of that. I'm in a desperate attempt throughout my life to help people smooth their feathers. That's my gig. I'm like, hey, let's everybody calm down. Everybody calm down. Let's smooth out our feathers. Let's take a little breather. And let's see what the hell is really going on here. And usually you find out there's a nice solution we can all agree upon, and then we move forward happily. That's me. I don't know who's out there trying to get people upset. I don't know. Just doesn't work for me, but I wonder. I wonder how many people are out there. What do we call them nowadays? We call them trolls, guys that show up in your live stream. They no other purpose except to see if they can upset people. I don't know. If that's fun to you, I don't know, but we get leaks nonetheless. I think a lot of the leaks that the Jets experience happens to be one of two things, really. Smokescreen. I think that the Jets beat and all the reporters and everybody, I think they get a lot of false information that's not, put out there for the same reason as the troll stuff. It's put out there because they're trying to create a scenario where their goals have a better chance of being realized. So they make this person think that, they make a decision based on that information, and then, ooh, I get my guy. That kind of thing. So I think there's some of that. And then the other side of it, and I am convinced of this, I think that our beat in particular, they're really not in the know. And they don't know anything, and they got to seem relevant, so they put stuff out there. That's just what I believe. Again, who knows who I am, right? What am I? I'm some white-bearded, fluffy-faced dude out here in an RV talking about the Jets. So what do I know? So let's go ahead and get this shindig started with a little section we like to call the News of the Week. As I was saying, you're going to start noticing, if you haven't already, there's just a little bit less news today than there was last week. And as we move forward, you're going to start seeing less and less and less. We used to call this the blackout period for NFL news. The good news, whether or not you like Roger Goodell, one thing that his regime, let's call it, has been able to do is to make the NFL experience almost a 12-month continuous experience, which is very interesting. Years ago, it wasn't like that. It was like the season ended, for the Jets, it was over, but then there'd be the playoffs, the Super Bowl, a couple things about that. Then it went dark. And then we had the draft, which was nowhere near covered like it is today. It was, it was just a couple guys going, oh yeah, and by the way, the Jets picked Blair Thomas today. That kind of stuff. About 20, 30, 40, 50 Jets fans underneath the garden in the Felt Forum, yelling and screaming. But other than that, we'd get the draft, and then it would go dark again. Then they'd say, oh yeah, the Jets reported for training camp today, and they'd give us an article or two. And that was it. We had this whole lull, which really consisted of very, very little news about the NFL or specifically our New York Jets. So now what Goodell has done is he's kind of made this an all-year thing. But there's still, you can only make up so much stuff. I mean, you can only make the draft so big. You can only make the schedule release so big. I mean, look how big the schedule release is now. Years ago, it was just like, the schedule release. Like, who cares? Yeah, okay, great. We already knew who we're playing, so we start this. We start against this team. It wasn't the deal that it is now with so many social media platforms and all the fans out there losing their minds over everything. So now it's a big deal, but here we go. If the Jets don't sign someone in free agency, there's really nothing to talk about. We had rookie minicamp. That was 2 days of, hello, little something. Got to see the jersey numbers. Ooh, we freaked out about that. God forbid Breece Hall has the number 35. I don't think some Jets fans could handle it. I really don't. So they made that a thing, but here we go. And we have drips and drabs. I will tell you a couple interesting things are happening, though. One is we lost one of our scouts this week. I don't know if a lot of you pay attention to this stuff. I like to, as best I can, I like to try to acclimate myself with who the Jets really are. Who are these guys? Like, we go into the draft and we talk about Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh. We talk about their phone calls and Joe Douglas better this and Joe Douglas better that. Before that, it was Mike McCagnon and John Idzik and Trader Mike and Terry Bradway and all the guys. We like to talk about them, but the truth is that those guys can do very, very little without the infrastructure that they put in place. We know Joe Douglas has really done a good job with his upper management staff, starting with Rex Hogan, the assistant GM, who was already here with us under Mike McCagnon, left us for a better job with the Colts. When Joe Douglas came over here, he brought him back and gave him the assistant general manager role. And then we have guys, well-known guys like Phil Savage, who was a GM before, ran the Senior Bowl as the executive director. Guys like Chad Alexander, who is another rising star out there in the personnel world. There are some who think that in a few years he might be poached for a GM job or an assistant GM job or something like that. They're thinking that Chad Alexander, his star is still on the ascend, so we have him as well. And it's just an interesting thing with all of our scouts. Like, these are the guys that go out there and give Joe Douglas the information that he has to make the picks. He likes to say things like, I trust our process, I trust our evaluation staff, and we got to stick to our board. Well, who makes the board? It's these guys. So we got poached by an ascending guy, a guy that's on the upward trend. His name is Alonzo Dotson, who has been here for the last 4 years. So all through Joe Douglas's regime. I will say, when Joe Douglas came over, they changed him from the West Coast scout to the Southeast scout. So we know we took a guy in the first round from the Southeast region. His name is Jermaine Johnson. So we can pretty much deduce that a lot of the information about Jermaine Johnson came from Alonzo Dotson. So these are the guys feeding him the information. Obviously, we had the Senior Bowl and all that stuff to look at Jermaine Johnson a little bit closer. But Alonzo Dotson was the guy handing Joe Douglas the folder with all the info on it for Jermaine Johnson. So we lost this guy to the Buffalo Bills. So they take one of our rising personnel stars, they grab him, and they give him a promotion. He's now the national scout for the Buffalo Bills. Before he was with us, he was with the Green Bay Packers for half a dozen years. I mean, look, this stuff happens all the time. It's not the biggest deal in the world, but it's important to know. I'm going to be paying attention to how Joe Douglas replaces him. Is he bringing someone else in from the outside? Is there somebody on deck that's just waiting to have that job? It'll be interesting to see, but I never like hearing that our division rivals take good people from us. We only focus on the coaches and stuff like that a lot of the time. If you look at this through certain lenses, the personnel people could be even more important than some of the assistant coaches and all that. Probably not, but they're right up there with them. These are the guys that we bring onto our team for the coaches to even have a shot at coaching. And a lot of the times, first boots on the ground are our scouts, our regional scouts. And hey, good luck, Alonzo Dotson. We'll miss you, buddy. And that was something that I saw floating down the river this week. Now, another thing, like I mentioned before, I mentioned the name Quan Alexander. What do we do here? We have free agency, day one in free agency, we all go live and we freak out. We're watching the clock. Come on. We see Alex Kappa get a $40 million contract in the first 3 minutes of free agency. Like they didn't tamper with Alex Kappa over there in Cleveland. Come on. How do you figure out $40 million and all the contract details in 3 minutes? Anywho, I'll leave that aside, but we start watching all this stuff. We get really, really excited for the first week or so of free agency, really the first 48 hours. We know that they signed Laken Tomlinson right away, then they re-signed Braxton Berrios, they did all this sort of stuff. We look at it as though free agency's done, but it's not done. And right now is an interesting time because of the compensation pick formula. A lot of people, a lot of teams wait till after the draft and then after May 3rd to start signing guys because they don't want to lose that comp pick that's coming to the NFL, from the NFL, for losing more free agents than they signed. I get asked all the time, how are we doing on the comp picks? And then it's funny, even though this is all established right now for next year, a lot of people are going to think and have this discussion next year, trying to think of whether or not we have a comp pick. That's all decided pretty much right now. There are a few variables that could happen in the event we cut somebody or somebody doesn't play. That stuff can all factor in later, but for the most part, the comp picks are all decided by May 3rd. At least as far as if you are getting any or not. The round and all that, there's more time for that stuff to be ironed out. But here we are, we're at this place. It's after the deadline of May 3rd, and guys start getting signed. One that just happened for us was Keelan Cole. Why didn't anybody sign Keelan Cole before the May 3rd deadline? That would have helped us, wouldn't it? Well, yeah, it would have. But it didn't because they waited till after May 3rd, didn't lose their potential comp pick, and they grabbed a wide receiver off of the free agent pile, and they're, no fuss, no muss. They're good. So where are the Jets with their comp pick formula? What if we do sign Quan Alexander in free agency? Does it affect us? Well, nothing affects us now. Like I just said, May 3rd was the end of that. Anybody that we sign right now would not impact the comp pick formula, but here's the bad news. We're not getting any comp picks. Again, there are a few very unlikely pieces that could take place and maybe jostle it around, but we are too behind on whether or not we could even be considered for a comp pick, and I'll break that down for you real quickly before we get into the guys that we might be signing. We lost for Alonso Fatukasi. He got a $10 million contract, which is really good. That could be a fourth, maybe even a third-round pick, depending on how they look at it. But we signed DJ Reed, so that washed him. So right there, boop, for Alonso Fatukasi's potential for comp pick is gone. Then we lost Marcus May. Ooh, another good one. He gets a $7.5 million contract. Maybe that's a fifth, sixth round pick, something like that. But we signed CJ Uzoma, and that's gone. So then we lost Morgan Moses to the Ravens. That's another good one. He made $5 million a year. Nope, we signed Jordan Whitehead, and that's eradicated. So that's gone. Then we lost Jamison Crowder, our beloved Jamison Crowder. What a good guy he was. I hate him on the Bills. I hope he doesn't do anything this year for the Bills, but loved him when he was here. He went out there and he signed a free agent contract with the Bills. So that also was a qualifying free agent. But guess what? We signed Tyler Conklin, and that is no longer an impact. So we didn't lose anybody else that qualifies. And we still signed Laken Tomlinson, Jacob Martin, Solomon Thomas. So these guys count toward the comp pick formula. And so we're behind. We're not going to get any. It's a bummer. I think Joe Douglas, it looked to me like he was trying to do it this year. How? I don't know. It just did. It had a different feel to it this year, specifically not signing guys like Keelan Cole, Tyler Croft, Kyle Phillips, all these guys, where some of them are still out there. I thought that they were very realistic options to be signed and apply to the comp pick formula. But as it were, we will not be getting a compensation pick from the NFL next year unless something really wacky happens. I just don't see it. So now we got these guys out there, Quan Alexander, Larry Ogunjobi. They're both out there right now. They both visited the Jets, and if we sign them, it doesn't matter. We can sign anybody we want right now. It doesn't matter as far as losing picks and all that. Now it only matters whose place are they going to take? Do we have the money? Those types of things. So it's interesting. We're seeing all these blurbs come out now. Now I want to just compliment our beat for pointing out the blatantly obvious. We see that Quan Alexander visits the Jets. We see that Larry Ogunjobi visits the Jets. And what comes out? The Jets are interested. Well, he did add the word very. So he added the word very. You got to give it to him. The Jets are very interested in these two players, Alexander and Ogunjobi. But here's the thing. You could kind of deduce that the word very could be used. Why? Well, because Larry Ogunjobi spent 2 days in our facility. So, I mean, you don't do that unless you're very, right? Very. That's where very comes in. So we don't know if it's going to happen. If you look at the track record of our beat, they don't really have such a good one of breaking these stories on who we're going to sign. They just don't get that kind of information from the Jets brass. But they were both here, and they would both be potential guys to bring on the team. Now, let's take a look at our Larry Ogunjobi real quick. Why would we want him? Well, he's a 27-year-old defensive tackle. He's from Livingston, New Jersey, everybody. Did you know that? So this would be coming home for him. So that's got to be a little bit of a positive. Maybe mom or dad or Uncle Jeb still live in the Livingston area. Not a lot of us know Livingston. I used to work in Livingston. I've done a lot of landscaping in Livingston. That's where he's from. He's a 304-pound, 3-tech-ish guy. So he's a very, very strong candidate to be a starter on our team. If he came over on our team, that would start to push things around a little bit. Maybe the JFM experiment on the inside, maybe Sheldon Rankins could get pushed out, or some of the lower tier guys. But I think if Larry Ogunjobi comes on this team, he's more than likely going to be vying for that starting job next to Quinnen Williams, and it'll be really interesting. Now, Larry Ogunjobi was signed by the Bengals when they had the 29th overall defense. Since they signed him, and they signed Hendrickson, a few other guys too, but since they signed him and brought him on, the defense went from 29th to 5th. So he's been a major impact on that defense because he had 49 tackles, 8 sacks, 41 pressures, 16 quarterback hits, and 12 tackles for a loss. So his impact is not fabricated. It's not like, oh, well, he kind of did this and that, good leader. No, man, on the field, he had his impact felt. Bringing him over to us would be an upgrade. Again, we don't know what's going to happen with JFM inside. He could really explode. So Sheldon Rankins is a very good player. Solomon Thomas even. But I think if Ogunjobi comes over, he's immediately an upgrade. Now, what's the problem with him? So great, sign him. Well, he just failed a physical when he was about to sign a contract with the Bears. It's really a bummer with this guy. He had a leg injury in the wild card game against the Raiders. As we know, the Bengals won. They beat the Raiders. And he went out during that game, so he missed the whole run to the Super Bowl. And he's a free agent, but he lost out on millions of dollars because of that same injury. Now, the Bears were going to sign him. It's kind of a head scratcher. They knew he was injured. They knew he had surgery. I don't know how physicals. I don't know. Is he ready for a physical? They bring him in. They're ready to give him a 3-year contract for $20.5 million. He fails the physical, and they wipe the contract clean. They take it off the table. So, but he's already injured. We know he's injured. But either way, any way you slice it, nobody has signed Ogunjobi since that either. Nobody's really, given him too much of a look other than the Jets. I think he has had a few other visits, but the Jets visit was the most serious. 2 straight days in our facility. So what is it? It's his physical capabilities. I mean, the guy has talent. He's not necessarily old. He's 27 years old. He's got the size, the metrics, the measurables, the stats. He's got everything you want. Something to do with this injury. I think teams might not believe that he can play this year, which would be an interesting signing. What if Joe Douglas brings him on anyway? Just bring him on anyway. You sign him, you kind of factor in, you already know you're more than likely not going to get much out of him this year. But now you got Larry Ogunjobi on your team, learning the defense, learning the teammates. He's kind of hanging out, getting the lay of the land. He comes in maybe towards the end of the season, or even next year, you can lose a guy like Nathan Shepard or Sheldon Rankins, and you already have Larry Ogunjobi in the house, 28-year-old, 305-pound defensive tackle that has been hanging around, absorbing your system and culture for a solid year. I don't know, man. It's all going to depend on what he wants. Now, are we going to sign him for 3 years, $20 million? Is he willing to sign a prove-it contract or anything like that? But what if, let's just say, what if we bring him on and he pushes a Sheldon Rankins off the team? We think, all right, he can be ready by week 3, week 4, something like that. We're willing to take that risk. And it pushes Sheldon Rankins off the team. Sheldon Rankins counts $5.4 million on the cap. $5.4 million. Let's just say, hypothetically, we give him that contract. 3 years, $20 million. We just lost $5.4 million, so now it's 3 years, $15 million. So it's just about $5 million a year for 3 years for a downright stud interior defensive lineman. I don't know, man. Could make a whole bunch of sense. The potential options with signing Ogunjobi, I think this guy, I don't know, man. I think he'd be an upgrade. I'd like to see that signing. As much as I don't think we need to move and shuffle around the defensive line, particularly the interior, I think if you got a chance to upgrade it, go ahead and do it. You don't have the comp picks to worry about. You can lose the money with Sheldon Rankins if that needs to happen, but you can keep them both. You can keep them both, and you probably could still afford it, and probably even get him down to maybe 2 years, $12 million, something like that. I don't know. Maybe you can do that. So I think it's interesting. I'm going to keep my eye on that. I think we all should. It's just an interesting one. Now, I don't know how interested we really are. If maybe during that 2-day visit, maybe they found something that is not going to work for them. Who knows? But let's keep our eye on that one. The other guy we're hearing a lot about is Quan Alexander. Very interested, the Jets are. So he's a 25-year-old middle linebacker, 6'1", 227 pounds, right in that pocket that Saleh likes. Now, the interesting thing with Quan Alexander is that he played for Saleh in San Francisco. 2019 and 2020, he was under Robert Saleh when he was the San Francisco 49ers defensive coordinator. But here's the wrinkle. Here's the rub, if you will. Yes, Quan Alexander played for Saleh. Yes, he had a good year under Robert Saleh. But right midway through that, right around game 5, they decided to trade Quan Alexander. So what does that mean? Why were they willing to get rid of him? Now, they traded him to the Saints for Kiko Alonso and a conditional fifth. I didn't look and see if the condition was met, if they did end up getting the fifth. But no matter how you slice it, they were willing to let him go. So I don't know. Does Saleh not like this guy? It remains to be seen. But either way, he's got the build. He has some very good stats. Made the Pro Bowl in 2017. His best year was 2016. It's one of those things where, you know, these people who decide on who goes to the Pro Bowl, they don't know who you are. You have this great year, but they've already decided they're going to give it to somebody they know better. Then next year, if you have an okay year, they'll give it to you it's like a bounce back year. Weird. Not to say 2017 wasn't a good year. He had 3 interceptions, a whole bunch of tackles. Now in 2021, he played 12 games, so he missed 5. Interestingly enough, he played 12 games the year prior and 12 games the year before that. So it seems to be his average of late, 12 games. Now that's something, I mean, for the Jets' history the past few years, 12 games is fantastic for our friggin' luck. But still, do you want to go into a situation where you already know more than likely he's going to miss 5 games? I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. That said, he would more than likely be an upgrade, and if not an upgrade, he would at least be veteran insurance for guys like Sherwood, Nasruddin, Quincy Williams in the linebacker core, because there are a lot of question marks. It's probably the group I have the most question marks going into this season. Our linebackers, after C.J. Mosley, we don't know what the hell they're going to give us. We don't. We saw Quincy Williams do some nice things. We also saw Quincy Williams struggle. Okay, really nice, exciting, fun stuff from Quincy Williams. We all love him. But there was a lot of places where he needed to improve or get off the field, and we know that. So Quan Alexander, he's also known as a good coverage linebacker. Every year has 5 to 10 passes defense, that kind of a thing. Has a few picks each year. He's a little bit better in coverage than we're used to seeing around here. 227 pounds. He can move and shake a little bit better than some of the heavier guys. So I think he would be a positive move. I would really like to see them bring Quan Alexander. If I had to pick one, I would say Quan Alexander, specifically because of my lack of confidence in the linebacker group. Hey, I'm rooting for Sherwood. I'm rooting for Nasruddin. Clearly, Saleh loves these guys, particularly Sherwood. So we don't know what they're going to bring. I'm a little nervous. I'd hate to see all this infrastructure put into so many other areas. The cornerbacks, the defensive line, the offensive line, the wide receivers, the running backs, the tight ends. All this stuff has been addressed, and we kind of left a vacuum in the middle of the linebacker position. I think bringing a guy like Quan Alexander in could at least just go, okay, well, we have a floor now. We have a floor. He's good in coverage, sure tackler, has a nose for the ball. He's been in Saleh's system, all those kinds of things. It gives us a little bit higher of a floor, and I think that could have incredible value. So other than that, I do want to make mention that we got rid of Greg Van Roten. I know it's weird. I keep realizing it. I don't know what it is. Now, I don't have a bad thing to say about Greg Van Roten, the person, but I have too many bad things to say about Greg Van Roten, the player. And even if the Jets are thinking about bringing him back in a depth capacity, maybe you give him vet minimum or something like that. Who knows? That said, we did go ahead and poach Nate Herbig off the waiver wire. I like that. I love it a lot. I think it's an upgrade. He's younger, he's better, all those types of things that apply to what you're trying to do with your team. So Greg Van Roten is gone, guys. There were so many issues centered around Greg Van Roten last year. He was a turnstile. He got Becton hurt, like just so many layers to the impact negatively that Greg Van Roten had on this team last year. And I think it's a good move. Again, I'm not throwing stones about the man, but I don't really want him around as a player. He's just done. So that also happened, and that will be the news of the week. Now, it's so interesting to me. So interesting. We're getting all this praise about our offseason. We're getting all this praise about some of the guys that weren't getting praise, like Denzel Mims is getting praise heaped upon him. Mekhi Becton is even getting some praise. It's starting to level off a little bit. People saying positive things about him. It's weird out there. But we're seeing all this positive, whether it be our offseason free agent acquisitions, our draft, All these people are saying, wow, man, the Jets really had a solid offseason. Then they bring out the schedule, and everybody thinks the Jets are going to be lucky to win 5 games. How the hell does that compute? We knew about which teams we were playing before they heaped praise upon us. Why? Why does all of a sudden they say, oh, you're playing the AFC North out of the gate? You're done. You're done. It's over. 4 or 5 games, you'll be picking in the top 5 of the draft. I don't see how that makes sense to me. Now, I'm not saying you got to believe that we're going to the Super Bowl, anything like that, but it just doesn't compute. It's inconsistent. Is that right? Is that a fair word to use? Inconsistency. Wow, they blew the doors off the draft. They added so many great guys. Pro Bowl this, talent that. Oh, yeah, they're going to win 4 games. I don't get it. That all said, I want to take a look at our offseason. Let's gain some perspective. It's been a lot. Madness. It's been madness. Let's take a look at it with a nice, calm, and collected eye in the intelligent gripe. All right, so the offseason. It's still the offseason, so I don't want to pretend that this is it. Again, we could even add Quan Alexander, Ogunjobi. Who knows what we could do? So many possibilities are still out there. So we'll leave that to the side and look at where the New York Jets are today. We know the draft. We know most of free agency. We know some trades. We know who's getting cut. We know everything we need to know. We even know the schedule. So this is a perfect time to take a look at where we are and how we really look at these moves as a collective. All right, let's take it and look at it as a piece, a work. Okay, so we started this whole thing off with signing Will Parks. Safety Will Parks re-signed, gave him a 1-year contract for a cool mill. And that's, look, that is what it is. He's clearly a depth piece. We don't know what his future looks like, but that's about where we put that one. We also signed Connor McDermott right out of the gate. Went and shored up our backup defense or offensive tackle. Now, some people say Connor McDermott sucks. Some people don't even know. Well, I don't even know what this guy is. Connor McDermott, I'm going to tell you, if you look at exactly what he did last year, aside from the amazing touchdown pass that he received, he was injured the first 8 games, whatever it was, last year. They bring him in for a full game. He just comes right off of injury, and he goes into the starting lineup, and he has to play a full game. For much of that game, he was awesome. And then he wore down, and he started to look foolish. He started to look confused, all that kind of stuff. So I have a lot of hope for Connor McDermott. Now, do I want to see him starting? Probably not. Not at this juncture in his career. At the same time, having a guy like Connor McDermott as your backup, at least going into training camp, I think is fantastic. 2nd year in the system, I think he's got a lot more upside than many Jets fans give him credit for. And it's going to be nice to see guys be able to stick around here. Now, I've shared this with you guys many times. I'm a huge fan of long-time depth. Huge fan. Now, I grew up in the era of Pat Ryan being our steady reserve backup quarterback for what seemed like my whole life. It was like 20 years it felt like. I mean, what do you mean Pat Ryan's not on our team anymore? He was behind numerous quarterbacks for us, and I just like the feel of that, knowing who your backup guys are. And that applies to the offensive line, defensive line, wide receivers. While they are on your team, filling a reserve role, what are they doing if your coaching staff is worth a damn? They're developing them. They're teaching them. They're helping them evolve into a better player. Not just a better player, but a better player for our system. This is what we call the pipeline. You can't really have a pipeline if you only have guys as backups for a year or 2 at most. You want to have guys 4th round picks, 5th round picks, maybe, waiver wire pickups like a Herbig. We don't know what their plans are with Herbig, but he's got a lot of potential. So if he's here for a year, 2 years, and you're looking at a guy, you're like, dude, this guy's ready to start in the NFL, you can allow a free agent to go, get his big money somewhere else, put your guy up. He's already been here for a year, 2 years, and you put him right in that spot without missing a beat. That's the way you want to do it. So I'm a big fan of that. Guys like Connor McDermott, guys like even Chuma Edoga, man, having these guys that know your system, if they need to come in for a game or two, they have the ability to perform at a high level for that stretch of time. They're not starters for a reason, but you can have guys that are here in the reserve capacity for a long time. And I think guys like Will Parks, but particularly Connor McDermott, fill that role. And I think it's a positive that we brought him back. We brought back safety LaMarcus Joyner. We're like, no, man, we're going to see what this guy has. We signed him last year. We're taking him out of the nickelback position where he had a dip in production. We're putting him back at his natural position. We're going to have a great time. 5 minutes later, he's done for the year. So they said, hell no, we are going to see what this guy brings. He fills the safety position for us, and it looks like they have designs on him starting. So it'll be interesting. They gave him a 1-year contract, about $2.5 million. So we also re-signed running back Tevin Coleman to be the vet in the room. I'm going to tell you, I don't mind this move. I think it's solid. They happen to like him. We know the LaFleurs of the world. This is their third stop with Tevin Coleman. 3 separate teams this guy has been with them, so they trust him. There's a lot of comfort in that. You know exactly what he's bringing, but that said, he is getting older. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If they really do like the progression of running backs like Michael Carter or Michael Pirine, if they like these guys and go, you know what, they're ready for an increased role, if they like them, I could see Tevin Coleman going by the wayside, especially because we added pretty much a first-round running back in Breece Hall. Look, somebody's got to go. I think that Tevin Coleman has a leg up on a lot of these other guys, but if the rest of the group looks good, I could see Tevin Coleman being a late cut in preseason. We also brought back, speaking of running backs, we brought back fullback Nick Bawden. Now, Nick Bawden, he had a really good showing at the end of the year, and again, if they want the fullback position filled, you might as well have a guy who's here for more than 10 minutes. Keep him on the squad. You don't have to make tight ends into fullbacks and all that. You got your fullback, Nick Bawden. I like it. I'm not saying one way or the other if he's going to be great, but I thought he looked good, and he got into that little bit of a fist fight scuffle at the end of the year. I like that. He was defending a teammate. That has points. Yeah, you gain points with me, fella. So I like that. We also had the re-signing of defensive tackle Nathan Shepard. And as I mentioned, Braxton Berrios was a really, really important re-signing. I think that one rises through the smoke as the most important re-signing for us last year. And it's not just about his production, which I do think is going to increase this year. I have a sneaking suspicion that the Jets think Braxton Berrios can be a solid 3 in this league. Even in addition to that, we got his special teams impact. So the guys are just a whole bundle of talent and potential production. But bigger than that is his relationship with Zach Wilson and the message that it sends throughout the other team. This is a guy who was a late round pick. He was a late camp cut, signed off waivers. This is a guy who worked his way up to getting a free agent contract. If you do that here, we're going to reward you. Joe Douglas said as much before he signed Braxton Berrios. He actually said signing Braxton Berrios is a priority because you want to reward guys that do things the right way. So I think it's important on just so many levels. And at the bottom floor of it, he's good. He's actually a good football player. Zach trusts him. I think that has a lot of value. Now, here's an interesting one that I think 9 out of every 10 Jets fans thought was virtually impossible. Dan Feeney's back! We know it. He's smashing beer cans on his head at least twice a week. We know this guy. He really looked like dog turds at the guard position. I mean, it looked like this guy, when his contract's up, he's done. But guess what happened at the end of the year? Connor McGovern got hurt. Dan Feeney came in and actually looked okay at the center position. This will be his second year in the system. That has value. Judging guys on their first year in a system, it's a little presumptuous in my opinion. Now you can tell one guy really sucks, but Dan Feeney would have fallen into that category in many people's minds. So it's an interesting re-signing, but ultimately I do see it as a positive. He played well at the end of the year. He's been a starter in this league before, just sitting as a number 2 behind Connor McGovern for the year. Hey, why not? But he got $3 million. That's even more surprising. He got almost as much as our next guy we're going to talk about. We re-signed quarterback Joe Flacco. Amazing. This is a guy that we had 2 years ago on our roster. We let him go in free agency. Then we traded a 6th-round pick for him to get him back. And now he's re-signed. This will be his 3rd year with us. How interesting is that? Joe Flacco. Would you ever have thought it? I would have never thought Joe Flacco would be a long-time Jet, but I think it's a good move. They gave him $3.5 million just to tick over what Dan Feeney got, and we also signed his partner, quarterback Mike Effin White, whose jersey made it into the Hall of Fame for the 405-yard game against the Bengals last year. I think it's a good move. Keep the quarterback room together if you have the opportunity to do so. They like Mike White. Joe Flacco's kind of assumed that mentor role, which he wasn't so into in the beginning. If you remember, he said when they traded him to Denver, they asked him how he feels like he could be an impact on Drew Lock. He said, I'm not here to be an impact on Drew Lock. I'm not here to coach this guy or mentor him. We're hearing some of that out there right now with Ryan Tannehill. Don't forget, Joe Flacco was in that mindset at one time too. Not so much anymore. I think he's realizing where he was or where he is. And look, when he came in, he played okay. So you got that. We know what Joe Flacco can give us. His arm is still as strong as ever. And I like it. Mike White and Joe Flacco coming back for Zach Wilson. Keep them together, man. Keep them together. Oh, a big one. We re-signed the first kicker that we've had that didn't make you miserable. All right, Eddie Pinheiro, a late season grab. We signed him. He was 100% on PATs and on field goals. Why not? You bring him back, but they did give him $2.4 million contract. That leads me to believe that one of two things. Either there was some competition for him or they really like him. They want him to know, hey, we want you to be our kicker. Now, you hear a lot of people gripe about that he kicks low. He kicks like kind of line drivey, which could get you into some trouble. But he's a good kicker, man. The only reason he lost his job, his starting job before, was because of injury. So let's see. I'm happy that Joe Douglas is finally addressing the kicker position, because that leads me to when we get to the next piece, I might as well start with him. We signed Zuerlein from the Dallas Cowboys, another kicker, to have a legitimate kicking competition. This is the first time in Joe Douglas's tenure with us that there's a legitimate kicking competition. He has had more than one kicker in here at a time before, but turds, like bottom of the barrel types. And look, we have had a complete mess going on with the kicking situation with the Jets. This is the first time we have a guy who was just 100% for us and a guy who's been one of the better kickers in the league before. Guys, I'm going to tell you, yes, Zuerlein was cut. Yes, we know all that. He was thrown out, signing guys off what could be called the scrap heap. I get it. The last two kickers for us that were really good, Jason Myers, Pro Bowl kicker, Nick Folk, not Pro Bowl, but excellent kicker, one of the best kickers that we've ever had. Guess where they both came from? The Dallas Cowboys scrap heap. So, go back. Go back to the same scrap heap. You already got 2 gems out of it. Go pluck another one and see where it goes. But at minimum, guys, we have 2 legitimate NFL kickers that are in the house and are going to compete with each other to see which one we go into the season with. I'm going to tell you, barring some sort of injury situation one way or the other, I think Pinheiro is going to win the job, and I'm happy with that. So now let's look at our free agent class. Not a bad re-signing bunch. You know, lots of guys for depth. The only guy who's really a starter is Braxton Berrios. You know, he could be considered a starter. And maybe Pinheiro. But other than that, we just shored up a lot of depth, a lot of pipeline guys. I guess Nick Bawden could be in there and LaMarcus Joyner too. It's not confirmed, but maybe so. But a lot of guys like Will Parks, Connor McDermott, Nathan Shepard, and all those types of guys. Good re-signings and keeping the band together, so to speak. And then we went out to free agency. We all talked about what it was going to look like, what we needed to do in free agency. Number one on many of our lists was that right guard spot. We need a different player in that damn right guard spot. Hopefully he's actually good. We went out in free agency. Our first signing was my number one hope for that position was Laken Tomlinson from the 49ers, coming off a Pro Bowl year, has played with our coaches very recently. 2 years ago, he was under them. So I think it's a fantastic move. He comes over to play left guard, though, and ABT moves over to right guard. I'm fine with it. I love it. I think it's a slam dunk, and I'm really happy with it. We followed that with another re-signing that I really liked. Truth is, I was looking for a different tight end. I was, but Uzomah was on my list, and I think he was a fantastic signing because the Bengals were trying to retain their tight end, CJ Uzomah, and they weren't able to do so. Now, the Jets didn't do a Christian Kirk situation or a CJ Mosley situation where they just dumped boatloads of money on him. That's not what happened. They gave him a standard contract for his position. Good contract. For whatever reason, CJ Uzomah decided to leave Joe Burrow and a team that just made it to the Super Bowl for Zach Wilson and the New York Jets for regular money. So I think it's very, very positive. Sends a message. He already gave a great interview with us. Says he loves the tight end room. He said we could run 3 and 4 tight end sets here. Yeah, now we're talking. Could you imagine how happy I'd be if they started running 3 and 4 tight end sets? Just bring out the tight ends, man. What are they going to do? Put a bunch of linebackers out there? The cornerbacks ain't going to be able to cover them and keep up with them when they got the ball in their hand. You'll be dragging 4 cornerbacks around with them. Oh, I love it. So then we did I think probably the first surprising move. We were looking at a few cornerbacks, but we did want the Jets to bring on a vet cornerback, at least one vet cornerback. To do what? To round out this super crazy young group of corners that we have. They went to Seattle, and I'll admit, I was surprised by this. I like it, but I was surprised that they brought in DJ Reed over some of the other guys that I was thinking that they would consider. 3 years, $33 million, $10.5 million guaranteed. And look, he's a stud. He's a stud. He's also played with Saleh in the past, so we get a nice, happy reuniting of the two there. And then we followed that with safety Jordan Whitehead. Might be the best free agent signing. He might end up being proving that he's the most important. I think he's a slam dunk. He's only 25 years old. 2 years, $14 million with only $7 million guaranteed. I love it. I think he's the perfect vet, young vet to bring in with this group. Now we brought in DJ Reed and Jordan Whitehead from free agency, kind of give this young group a little boost of professionalism and vet leadership while still keeping the group super young. I love it. And now came the other surprise. I think most of us were surprised to see this one. We came out and we signed a second free agent tight end, a starter, 61 catches last year. Tyler Conklin from the Vikings. I couldn't believe it. It was like finally, my New York Jets are taking the tight end position and placing a focus on it. We haven't seen it in forever, man. I've damn near given up that the Jets were ever going to have a good tight end room. But here we are. We got 2 free agent tight ends, both of who, if you just look at last year's production, we're looking at over 100 receptions. Guys, these are instantly the best tight ends we've had here since at least Dustin Keller. Very different player, but that's the last tight end worth anything really that we've had outside of 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, guys who had a couple games. It's been a very, very dark period for tight ends. We went out and brought in 2 in free agency, and then we followed that up with the first of our addressing of the edge position, Jacob Martin, 3 years, $13.5 million, $6 million guaranteed. Again, guys, I talk about it all the time. He didn't do too much last year as far as statistically, but he did get his sack against George Fant and Ty Johnson. Beat them both to sack Zach Wilson. He's a very vocal guy, very positive. I think he's a great addition to the team. Great addition. He folds right into that character piece that we're trying to add. Aggressive, upbeat, vocal, violent. Like we're seeing all that stuff. Hardworking, blue collar, great work ethic. They're collecting guys that all have these pieces. And I think Jacob Martin folds right in from there. Now, guys, then we get to the draft. All right, then we get to the draft. Now, we've talked a lot about the draft recently, but now looking at that free agent and re-signing free agent period, solid, man. We did just about everything that we wanted to do. The only thing that I think we could have addressed maybe a little bit was the linebacker position, and I thought that maybe we'd bring in one more vet edge rusher, at least to kind of round it out. It's kind of what I was thinking, maybe a wide receiver, right? We know that we were out there. We were in on a few wide receivers, Amari Cooper, Tyreek Hill. There was lots of rumors about DK Metcalf and A.J. Brown. So we know that we were out there at least interested. I thought that one of those would materialize, but by and large, I think that the free agent portion of the offseason was executed perfectly. Very, very well. I'm very happy with it. And that leads us to the draft. First round pick, Sauce Gardner. Surprised the living hell out of me. You guys, I said it ad nauseum. I do not see the Jets taking a cornerback in this draft. Not only did we take one, we used the 4th overall pick on one. Hey, this is where you see best player available, sticking to their board, really taking shape, really applying. And I applaud them for that. Who doesn't like Sauce Gardner, the player? So we add Sauce Gardner, follow that up with the first round wide receiver. Guys, we haven't taken a first round wide receiver since 2001. Santana Moss. Not only are we addressing the tight ends, not only are we bringing in defensive backs for this young group, we're also breaking all sorts of molds. We're grabbing first round wide receivers. We follow that with trading back into the first round to pick 26 to grab a top 10 edge rusher in Jermaine Johnson.
With the 26th pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Jermaine Johnson.
Yes! Yes! Oh, let's go! Let's go!
Yeah!
Oh, baby! Let's go! Oh,
I love it.
Man.
Got our edge rusher. First edge rusher in the first wide receiver in the first in very, very long time. Then we go to the second, trade up again and get the best running back in the draft.
The New York Jets select Breece Hall, running back.
Holy
shit! No way! Oh, man.
Why would they feel the importance to do that? Why are they doing that? Well, because they already brought in the wide receiver. They already brought in the tight ends. We have last year's wide receivers. We got a quarterback. We fixed the offensive line. It's the obvious choice. We need a stud running back, best running back in the league type of a guy. That's the type of potential that Breece Hall brings, and I think it's fantastic. To go along with a running back we already like in Michael Carter. This was the obvious move, maybe not to us beforehand. Using hindsight, you see things much, much clearer, and that's what I'm doing here. But when you look at it, it makes a ton of sense. Running back, even though we've minimized the position as a whole the last decade or so in the NFL, it still has just as much importance as it always did. When you look at how much better an offense is when they have a legitimate running game, so, it's a running game that can be a threat, everything changes. And I think it's fantastic that we finally have a focus on that as well. So we wrapped up the draft with a beloved tight end, a third tight end. I don't even really know if it's sunk in yet. We just brought in 3 viable tight ends to go with another tight end that I like in Kenny Yeboah. I can't even believe this is real. We might actually have good tight ends and depth on top of that. We followed Jeremy Ruckert draft pick with a pipeline tackle, which is something I'm a huge fan of. I've been talking to you guys about it for years. Grabbing your lineman in the 4th, 5th, 6th round is the way to do it. You get guys in on your team, learning for a year or two, and then they're ready to start. Max Mitchell has all that potential and then some. And then we got who many people didn't even know was out there and now is the deep love of their life, Michael Clemens. Aggressive, violent, intelligent, patient, all those things, super long and strong, everything you want in an edge rusher coming out of Texas A&M. We grab him with our final pick in the draft. And guys, this offseason is looking pretty good. The schedule, you're telling me that you add all that and all of a sudden you can't win 4 games, 5 games, 6 games? My ass. Let me tell you something. Here's what's going to happen, and we're going to talk lots about this as we move forward. We're beating the damn Ravens on week 1. My wife, who's in the next room, is a Ravens fan from Baltimore. I don't care if she hears me. I don't care. We're going to kick the hell out of the Ravens. They're just going to be the first team that we use to put the NFL on notice. This isn't the Jets anymore. Look at that offseason, and it's not just a collection of guys. They're very specific. How we are building this team is becoming more and more apparent, and we're there. Our foundation is laid. We have the first couple tiers on top of that, having Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson, Berrios, Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, to go with Conklin, Uzoma, Ruckert, Yeboah, to go with Breece Hall, Michael Carter, Tevin Coleman, with a revamped offensive line, with a young quarterback with one of the stronger arms in the NFL. Are you kidding me? And that is the Intelligent Gripe. Yeah, man. So look, we're going to talk about all this. We're going to try to squeeze every drop out of the offseason lemon. We are gonna. That's a big lemon. You see, I'm like, it's huge. It's like a football lemon. I'm squeezing it. I'm going to squeeze this lemon for everything I can. We're going to try to find as much info and intel as we can on all the things remaining for this team before we go into the training camp. But guys, I have to say, when you take a step back and just look at the offseason as a work, as a project, they set out the end of the season last year. We won 4 games. We doubled our last year's win total. Raised it by 100%, everybody. So we get 4 wins. We go into the offseason. It starts with the Senior Bowl, which we got 4 guys from the Senior Bowl. Just saying, it started there. It starts with the Senior Bowl and goes through all the free agency and the draft and everything. And when you take a step back and look at it, this is going to go down. I'm saying it. This is going to go down as the best offseason in New York Jets history, and this is the one that catapults us into legitimacy. Now, are we going to win 12 games? I don't know. If you watched the Thursday thick of it last week, that's what we landed on. We did polls for every game. We landed on 12-5. Is that realistic? Maybe not. Maybe not. But is legitimacy coming? Yes, it is. Legitimacy is here. Let them all keep thinking, oh, but it's still the Jets. Every single team's fans that looked at the schedule on the week where they saw the Jets, there is not one fan base that said, oh, we're not beating the Jets. Every single fan base put a little W next to that week. You know it, and rightfully so. Good for you. You think you're going to beat us. It's going to start with Baltimore in our house, week 1. I will be there with you. We're going to watch this happen. This is the week where it all starts. Legitimacy. That's where we are. When you look at our offseason as a collective, that's all you can see. You cannot look at our offseason and come to any other conclusion. Sure, we didn't get every player I wanted. Sure, I would have done this and maybe that. That's okay. When you look at it all as a work, there's no other conclusion that you can draw. Legitimacy has arrived. Enjoy it, my friends. With that all said, I hope you have a fantastic week. Thanks for stopping by and hanging out with me. Oh, what was I saying? And as always, go Jets!